Not doing village anymore? Can't we do this?
All right, it is 4:30. Welcome to all of you. I'd like to ask, please, that you'd stand first. Join me in a moment of silence, and then we will say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our call, please.
Tom Eggers.
Here.
Wayne Barahona.
Here.
Pete Hamill.
Here.
Sean Brewster. Brad Hunt.
Here.
All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Make the motion to approve.
Support.
I might, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please.
Under item 4A, subpart I, there is a resolution that's been put in front of you, and also the media table, a notice of public hearing for that item regarding DJs.
Okay, so noted. Any other comments or questions? All right, then roll call, please.
Barahona.
Aye.
Hunt.
Yeah.
Aye.
Hamill.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
All right, and we now have some time set aside for public comments on anything unrelated to items that will appear later on in the agenda. If you have those comments, now would be the time to make it. If you're going to do that, step forward to the mic, state your name, and then say your piece. Anyone? I see none. So at this time, then, we are going to have the swearing in of Mike Davis and Austin Klein. I'd like to ask you guys to come forward. Austin Klatt, sorry, I put my glasses on. All right, I'd ask that you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Mike Davis,
I, Mike Davis,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will uphold all the laws
that I will uphold all the laws
of the Constitution of the United States,
of the Constitution of the United States,
the state of Iowa,
the state of Iowa,
and the city of Sheldon.
and the city of Sheldon.
I will faithfully and impartially,
I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all duties of the Office of Director of Emergency Management. Let me say that again.
Yeah.
Discharge all duties
discharge all duties
of the Office of Director of Emergency Management
of the Office of Director of Emergency Management
for the city of Sheldon, Iowa,
for the city of Sheldon, Iowa,
as now
as now
or hereafter required by law.
or hereafter required by law.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'd ask you to sign these. There's 4 copies. And Austin, while he's signing, will take care of you. I'd ask you to do the same. Raise your right hand. I, Austin Klatt,
I, Austin Klett,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will uphold all the laws
that I will uphold all of the laws
of the Constitution of the United States,
of the Constitution of the United States,
the state of Iowa,
the state of Iowa,
and the city of Sheldon.
and the city of Sheldon.
I will faithfully and impartially,
I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all duties
discharge all duties
of the Office of Assistant Director of Emergency Management
of the Office of Assistant Director of Emergency Management
for the city of Sheldon, Iowa,
for the city of Sheldon, Iowa,
as now or hereafter required by law.
as now or hereafter required by law. Thanks, Greg.
And if you would sign.
You bet.
You get one of these. Sign.
There you go. Yeah.
instead of 3.
Yahtzee.
Thank you, gentlemen, for stepping up to these roles.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Someone want to make a motion to approve that, please?
Motion.
We'll take one of those as motion and Tom motion, support from Tom.
We'll give him the
Motion by
motion.
Darrell.
I'll take support.
Thanks, buddy.
Is there any discussion at any items? Any questions? Roll call, please.
Hamel.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Okay. All right, moving on then to item 4 under old business. And we have the development proposals for city-owned properties that we've discussed previously. We'll start with the draft redevelopment agreement as well as the resolution for the former DJ's Redemption Center.
All right.
Sam.
Thank you, Mayor. In your packets is a draft agreement with Kent and Janet Lorenz, and the Lorenzes have requested one minor change to the agreement relating to the determination of removal of concrete. Rather than agreeing now to remove all of the concrete, they would like to be able to keep some of it potentially, and so the latest version of the contract has a line in there that allows the Public Works Director, Todd Ewell, and I to make that determination after the initial demolition. What we didn't want to do, though, is agree to do that now. So but that's it. I think that's the only sticking point. And if you want to.
Yeah, Ken, if you want to comment, please step forward.
No, that would be fine, too. You can inspect it after it's down and stuff. Just some minor things in here. The address that's on this contract is the business address. I don't know if you wanted our physical home address on there.
Do you have a preference?
Doesn't really, probably everything else I have is, no, it probably doesn't, because it'll be onto that, added onto that same property.
And if the city would need to notify you for some reason in the near future, would they use the 450 West Park address? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
During the day.
All right.
And then one other thing, regarding the easement on there, that would no longer be applicable. It wouldn't be necessary once we own all the property. So
Okay.
if it's a problem to take that off, if it isn't, doesn't really matter.
I think we'll leave it as is now, but like you said, if you get ownership, it'll merge together.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right. Any questions for Kent at this point?
No.
Okay, thanks, Kent. You can
Okay,
see the-
thank you.
I recommend a motion to approve the resolution.
Yeah, and then we will need a motion then to approve this resolution based on the conversation we've had here today, as well as what you have before you.
So move.
Support.
Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if as part of that motion, it can be authority for yourself and Angie to execute the contract, of course, subject to the normal process of a public hearing and of final action by resolution. That way, all the parties can have it executed prior to the hearing,
Okay.
because the final contract is conditioned on that hearing, but that would just help with the flow of things.
Okay. Did you catch that? And you're comfortable with that, adding that to your motion?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Eggers.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
All right, then moving on to the second point under old business, the redevelopment of 1401 South 2nd Avenue, Sunset Motel, and 1023 Garfield. What do you have for us on that, Sam?
Thank you, Mayor. There's been additional information since the last meeting that has been added to the council packet and to my report. And then I put copies of these 4 pictures submitted by the Sterlers. and there's copies for all of you and for the media table. So Tim Potabom has also supplied additional information. There's several ways you can go with this. You can make a motion to pick one and move forward, subject to the public hearing process. You can also make a motion if you'd like, as I've written in my report, that you could do a last best offer period as well.
All right. Comments, questions, gentlemen?
Sam, if you could just elaborate on the last best offer. Is that a sealed bid type process, or how does that work?
The recommendation, or one of the options, would be to ask for offer a motion to open a last best offer period until noon on Wednesday, February 5. The two current proposals would be received as is with the additional detail that's been provided over the last 2 weeks, but either can be withdrawn or replaced. Replacement proposals would be in a sealed envelope and would be opened at the February 5 council meeting, and it would not be revealed until the council meeting if updated or new proposals were received. New proposals from other parties will complicate the matter but would be allowed. The city retains the right in its sole discretion to accept, reject, in whole or part any offer. And the other option, Wayne, would be to offer a motion to pick one party or the other, authorize us to proceed with negotiating a contract that would be subject to a public hearing. In doing that, you could also end up with a situation where somebody would then come forward with a last best offer anyway, and then you'd have to decide at that point whether you wanted to accept that. But at that point, any additional offers that come in would become a matter of public record at the moment received.
But you're saying at this point, even if we do direct one party or the other, someone else could still come in during the negotiation process.
They could. And that's why a last best offer period cleans it up a bit.
Sure.
But ultimately, it's up to you to decide who to award it to. So if you make up your mind that this is it, then that's your call too. But it's still subject to a public hearing.
Because of this way this has come through, the bids and so on, coming in after the initial request for bids, and then we have a bid from two and a counter offer, raised bid from one. To me, this last best offer route seems to be the best way to go, the fairest way to go. And it gives us time to analyze a little bit at that point too then.
I'd make a motion that we go with the last best offer option and make our decision on the 5th of February.
Make a decision then, or do you want to have time to review? I think we might need a little time in there to.
So
Well, it would still be subject to the public hearing.
it'd be opened at the meeting. So
Yeah. So walk us through that process. They're open at the meeting and then.
open them at the meeting, and it might become very obvious instantly. It
Okay.
also might become even more muddy than it is now. So
I'd second that.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to move on with this. So let's let them give a chance to do whatever they want to do, and then let's make a decision on the 5th and move on. So.
Okay. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Farahona,
Aye.
Himmel,
Aye.
Kent,
Aye.
Eggers,
Aye.
All right. Moving on to new business. Under the first point there, meeting procedures.
no, just go ahead and open it.
All right, I'm going to at this time, we're going to open the public hearing for comments on the proposed meeting procedures that have been presented. Are there any public comments from anybody at this time? Yeah, step forward, please. State your name.
Mark Van Riesen. Yeah, I see that you're going to do some changes. I didn't read them all to make a difference. I prefer you keep it the way it is. I've attended many meetings and different over the years of my business, being in business for 40 years. And I understand you guys can get in some sticky points sometime. You hear things you don't want to hear. I've been to school board meetings all over the state, more or less, in different areas. Sheldon Community School District is a shining example of how they run a good meeting. They're open. They're honest. They take all questions. They've been answering all questions the last good while. And they return your phone calls. They return your emails. I found that out. It's very much appreciated. Is what they created when they did that is cooperation within the community. And we had some trouble a number of years ago. And since then, they created that cooperation. Look what we have. We have a new middle school. High school's all updated. East Elementary's remodeled. Everything's going well. Teachers are happy. Patrons of the district are happy. And they have money, and we've supplied them with money. It never used to be that way, guys. But they've been open and honest. That's all I can say about it. And I know you can get in some situations sometimes, and I've been involved in those things here. But I think we can work through those things without having a bunch of big changes to make it look like you're shoving people off, because I think that's what it amounts to. Thank you.
Thank you for comments, Marv. Anyone else want to speak to this issue? All right, then let's move on to the second point of that.
I make the motion to close public hearing.
Okay. Support. Who support?
Tom.
Tom. Okay.
I get it this time.
Roll call, please.
Himmel.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
All right. Moving on then to the union merger. Public hearing. Open the public hearing on that.
We have to do the resolution.
Oh, here we go. Yes, thank you. All right, then we need to have a motion on a resolution establishing a public comment period at the beginning of the city council meetings.
I make the motion to approve.
Support.
Discussion.
We're not changing anything.
No, we're not
The
changing
public
anything.
has the right at public comment to talk. This is only putting rules on paper to follow. It gives the chairperson, Greg, the opportunity to run a meeting efficiently.
I would add that it's in our intent not to skirt issues, but to honestly and prepare and address those issues as they're presented. Sometimes that will be able to be done when the question's asked. Sometimes that won't, but it will be followed up with the people and in an open session the next meeting. So this is nothing to suppress anything. It just gives the mayor and us as a council an opportunity to keep the meeting moving without not giving someone their right to speak to whatever they want to speak to. So it's more formality, but it is something I think that will help the meeting, and I think it'll help the public to prepare for open comments and to present those open comments during the meeting as well. So I'm in support of it.
And there's also on the agenda tonight, there's 2 other spots where we have public hearings that the public's welcome to come to the podium and visit, talk. But this just lays the rules out.
We value the input, and we want to make sure that we give you honest and correct feedback on that input. So.
And two, when you start one thing that I found in my short time on council is that tangents can start. And then suddenly you start going down rabbit holes, and then the actual original intent of perhaps a particular patron's concern or comment gets lost. This allows us a very clear and defined way to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and is heard on an equal footing.
So come with your questions. We'll be answering all your questions. It may not be immediately that night, but we will get back to you and through the public with an answer. So.
All right, I think we're ready for a roll call, please.
Himmel.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
All right. Moving on then to the union merger. I'd like to open the public hearing on that. We do have a colleague of mine, John Winkle, who is the mayor of Sergeant Bluff, with us today, along with Preston DeBoer. The reason he's here, he's here because they just went through this, and he wants to share a little bit about the process and what they did while they were going. I don't know, Preston, do you want to introduce him? You want him to run with it? What's your preference here?
I think you just did, Mayor.
I kind of did. So, John, if you're ready, we'll just start with you. If you would step forward to the mic there, and again, state your name for the record.
All right.
I'm John Winkle, the mayor of Sergeant Bluff, much smaller than Sheldon, but a very fast-growing community, and been mayor for 6.5 years. I got kind of rushed into a role because we had a person, our old mayor, moved. So I came in just during the budget cycle. So I learned under fire. Prior to that, I had a fairly interesting career that involved a lot of people. Good Lord put me in a spot where a company I work for called Long Lines, and we had 15,000 employees in 12 states. And so I learned a lot in that process, being responsible for so many people. And when the other problem that we had when I came into office, we hadn't been doing a lot. We had a lot of issues that I got to try to deal with. And anyway, with that little bit of background, I'm here to make just some comments. I do support this because our council recently not only voted unanimously to do this, but we also have, prior to this, over a year ago, when health care and a lot of other things were removed from collective bargaining, we had an opportunity to, I felt, unfairly take advantage of the situation, and I just didn't feel it was right. So we had an opportunity to freeze pay and still keep health care in. And what we did is we kept health care in and we didn't freeze pay because we thought that was a fair thing to do. Based on things I've learned that I'll share with you here in just a second. And so it was an amazing boost to our morale, I will say, but there's other things to consider. We have been growing very fast at our own scale of a small town. When I started working at the phone company there was 1,200 people in town. Of course, that was a long time ago. Now we're up to about 5,000. And we're the fastest growing community in Iowa for our size. And pretty proud of that. And we attribute that to several things. The first thing I noticed coming from business to council was the pay is much different, much less in the municipal side than it is the business side. And so, in Sergeant Bluff anyway, and I assume here.
You are correct, sir.
I mean, I get money showered on me as mayor, and so I feel really responsible for that $300 a month that I get. But seriously, for all the people that work full-time for a city, they can do better in the public sector, in the private business sector. So because we're growing, we've needed to hire some people, and it's been a little difficult as we've been growing. And so the reason we were able to have some success was the benefits on the municipal side. And so I started researching that several years ago to try to figure out ways to deal with it. And number one and number two, almost in a dead heat, were IPERS and healthcare. Because generally speaking, better healthcare, and with IPERS, better retirement. So that helps us as municipals compete, for good employees. Sometimes it's not always enough, and we have struggled in that regard in Sergeant Bluff. Last night, second and fourth Tuesdays are our council meetings, so last night we just hired a new billing clerk and a receptionist. Both of them placed a tremendous importance on healthcare and IPERS as a way to get them in the door and get them away from private business where they both were. And so those things translated to them, and they both shared this last night at our council meeting, to security for them and their families. So that's one point I would make. Turnover. Turnover is expensive. And a lot of times people don't realize it, that only look at the dollars and cents. I will make a general statement that I was responsible to shareholders my entire life. And now that I'm responsible to 5,000 people that all have my cell number, it's way more pressure than I ever had from sophisticated shareholders, believe me. And so I know all you feel the same way. I'm pretty sure of it. And so that's a key issue. And when you have a lot of turnover, it takes on average 4 to 6 months, and there's even some studies out there longer. When you have to hire a new person, because your turnover goes up, then there's an expense to that. Directly translates to increased dollars and cents. So you can get them up to full speed, so to speak, as a producing employee. Productivity. It's amazing, and I hope maybe Preston will even touch on this, when you see the morale of all of our employees. We had 3 unions. I don't know how many you have, but you have 2. Okay, so we had the clerks, public works, and police. And we took the first step to merge the first 2, and then are merging the other one. That was the way they wanted to do it. And so that's what we did. We also gave Preston the ability to use our community and my name at the state level as he deals with this issue, because we think it's very important. And all of our votes on this issue have been unanimous. And we had one council person that asked a lot of hard questions. And so we had to demonstrate to that person, which we successfully did, the benefits that come from doing this kind of a thing. Healthcare costs are also based on your experience levels. And we have found over and over again in my career at Longlines and in our city that happy employees have lower health care costs, and in addition to being more productive. And so that, I think, translates to a definite financial benefit of doing this. When they're happy also, they treat everybody in town better. They're less grumpy potentially. I mean, there's just a better atmosphere. And so we've seen that, we've experienced that, and we're thankful for that. So I would just use a silly example, I guess. If you've got since we got snow and more coming, if you have a snowplow out there, that truck's a really nice asset. Big salt box in back, nice blade on front. That's a good asset for the community. And you've got a driver in that truck. What's your most important asset? And so we, time and time again in Sergeant Bluff, prove that and focus on that over and over. And as I mentioned earlier, the last point I'll make, we keep trying to determine why we're growing, because we have to compete with Sioux City 7 miles away for everything we get. And we have 4 things that we continually remind each other on our console, that number 1 is our people, number 2 is lower taxes that we have, number 3 is our schools, and number 4 is our amenities, our parks, our recreation, our trails, our programs that we run around those different assets, again, involving people. So I'm here merely to share my experience and to ask you if you would at least please give consideration to doing this, because I think it's good for people, and that translates over and over to being good for your whole community. So if you have any questions, I'd take them. Otherwise, I'll sit down and shut up.
All right, thank you, John, for coming today.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much,
it.
Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments related to this issue? Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, my name's Marv Van Riesen. We heard from somebody from Sergeant Bluff, but we don't live in Sergeant Bluff. I don't know much about Sergeant Bluff. I don't know what their finances are. I do know that the city of Sheldon's finances are not good. And I feel we do pay our employees plenty, enough livable wage and so forth. And we treat them well with benefits. It seems like the whole big crux of it is insurance. I'm going to read something here that I wrote here. And I hope you listen to it closely, because it sort of sums up the deal. It is beyond my belief city officials are supporting the inclusion of the Public Works Union in the Public Safety Union. The new law passed in 2017 and upheld by the Supreme Court of Iowa in 2019 does not require such a merger. If done by the city of Sheldon, in my opinion, shows poor judgment. The law provides public employees not working in public safety, such as police officers, firefighters, and park rangers, to be exempt from the new law. However, other public employees, including public works, teachers, etc., are unable to bargain for insurance, hours, vacations, holidays, overtime, seniority, break time, grievance procedures, just cause standard, job posting, and health and safety matters unless their employer agrees to negotiate those items in a union setting. Why would the city want to negotiate these items with the union when they are not required to do so? This makes no sense. Why have an arbitrator from some university far away tell the city what benefits will need to be paid by local taxpayers with no accountability and to the local taxpayers? Public employees are still able to bargain for their wages at a maximum of 3%, if you look at the law, or cost of living, whichever is lower. Why give up your right as an employer? And that's what we are here as an employer. Did the police union agree to do this, or was it jammed down their throat by the union? This new law is about returning power to the local elected officials and giving you, the city, the ability to pay more outstanding employees and terminate the occasional bad actor to promote to protect the city from incompetence. This is about giving local government flexibility and giving the taxpayer a seat at the bargaining table. I ask you councilpeople, how many of you people have read Chapter 20? It's long. Did you read it? Chapter 20 is a collective bargaining law. I bet none of you have done it. I might be wrong. Maybe you have. If you've read it, you would not want for our city to go in this direction. It is a very poor move and will cost the city significant dollars in years ahead. I urge you to utilize management committees, meet and confer sessions, and interest-based bargaining like is used in our community schools, community colleges, and counties. It works. Employers are much happier, employees are, and are much less expensive. Let the public safety people, police, bargain as required by law and keep the rest of the employees out of the political process. Wake up city council, the legislature is giving you help, and you don't realize it. I think that pretty well sums it up if you read that law. And this is not about taking any type of insurance away from anybody. We should pay our employees, and we should give them health. I don't have a problem with that. Is it the cost got so high, something has to be done now, drastically. And if you get up this right, you can't go back. You can't go back. And then you're at bargaining this insurance thing, and I'll guarantee you, you will play hell getting that insurance cost down. The only other alternative a guy could have is terminate employees to keep the cost down. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Marv.
Just curious, Marv, you passed out papers to the rest of the council. I think you forgot 2 over here.
I'm sorry. I had the same experience here before. I give it to the chair up there. He can pass it.
If you're going to hand out handouts, have them for everybody.
You do the same, Brad.
I do.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Order. Are there any other public comments at this time? Yes, sir. Step forward. State your name.
Preston DeBoer. I'm the ASME representative for Northwest Iowa. First off, I want to thank the City Council. This is my 5th visit, and it's becoming more comfortable each time. It always helps to get to know people that you're working with. Bringing this to this stage at this time basically is, at least in my view, keeping the ball, keeping everybody in the game. This is about people that work for the city, live in the city, spend their money here in the city, and that have had the rights, input, information to negotiate their terms of employment since 1974. I'm not going to get into any argument as to why that law changed, but to take rights away, I mean, it struck me kind of interesting. If you look at the state of Iowa flag, if I could demonstrate. Our motto is, our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain. Struck me struck me as interesting that during the process when this law changed, that was brought up because legitimately the vast majority, approximately 90% of the rights that public works employees, non-public safety had were pulled away from them. Okay, and this particular change in the law, not one representative, not one senator campaigned that this was a problem. So it came out of the blue, and it went through in record time. The comment was made by a gentleman you all know, Tom Orley, that this basically went through the House and the Senate and to the governor's desk where it was signed into law immediately in less time than what they could pass a law if both sides agreed on it, and both sides didn't agree on this. But these folks here, they're part of Sheldon. They're part of Sheldon as citizens. They're part of Sheldon as the folks that basically do the work of the city. They are part of the community when they participate in volunteer services like firemen, members of the ambulance service, coaches. And basically, I can't really say anything beyond John has already said. They are an asset. And it is becoming extremely difficult. And I have the experience of going around. I have about 41 different contracts that I maintain, and I'm hearing the same thing. With the exception of the city of Sioux City, all of these smaller communities are finding that when somebody retires, when somebody leaves and goes somewhere else, they are finding it increasingly difficult to replace those folks. When you're not getting the applications, and in the cases of folks with certifications, DNR certifications for your water or wastewater treatment, those folks are in high demand. I can tell you that here not too long ago, City of Hayward, smaller, had to basically to bring someone that they wanted to keep. Somebody had been there for years and years and years that they didn't had to provide him with a significant wage increase to get him to stay in the house that he had built and keep his kids in that school district. We can't, but they're not growing like some of the communities like Sioux City. And as time goes by, it's going to become more and more is simply that this council see its way to support their employees and pass this.
Any other comments from the public? Fred, can we get him a mic, Todd?
My name is Fred Grine, and I would ask leave it is in the best interest of the employees and the morale of the employees to pass this, negotiate the benefits they have in the past. Thank you.
Fred. Anyone else who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no others, I'd take a motion now to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Hamel.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
All right, moving on then. State your pleasure. Anything you'd like to add to the subject at this time, Sam?
Just like to point out, there's two resolutions in front of you. Position.
I make the motion to approve this merge.
As worded in the report from Sam.
Yes.
Okay. That's this one, right? Just want to state it, read it so that they understand. As soon as we can get this pulled up, I'd just like to read that so everyone knows here at the table as well as those in the audience how the motion is going to be stated. The resolution reads this way. Whereas the City of Sheldon has 31 full-time employee positions, 17 are non-union, and 14 are members of one of two unions led by employees. AFS CME. Of the 14 union employees, 8 are in the Public Works Unit and 6 are in the Police Unit. Meetings in 2019, the Sheldon City Council considered a request by American Federation, so on and so forth, on behalf of the city's union, one of a handful of places in Iowa where such a merger is possible, and this has been a very difficult issue due to the state and local dynamics involved. And whereas I signed an affidavit and petition for merger of bargaining units represented by the same organization. The documents were electronically filed with the Iowa's Public Employee Relations Board, PERB, on December 16. On January 2, 2020, the following motion was approved unanimously. Because of impact of merger on negotiations, motion to set a public hearing for January 15 on the proposed merger and authorize city attorney to seek a delay of the PERB hearing, which, and whereas by mutual agreement between, how do you say that, Preston? APSME, PERB, and the city, the hearing in Des Moines has been, and now therefore let it be resolved, the City Council of the City of Sheldon hereby supports the stipulation of successive bargaining units for merger and authorizes of the pending PERB hearing. So that's the entire resolution and with the motion at the end. Discussion?
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
Right. All right, Iowa Community College sports shooting team to use the community service center for citing in their packets, huh?
Yes, I can briefly. This is modeled after a nearly identical resolution in Cherokee. NCC has approached us, and they have retained the same person that does this program in Cherokee for the Cherokee School District. The only difference here is we have the police in the same building as where the practice would be, and we would need to make sure there's good communication with the police departments. We don't have officers surprised on the stairway or out in the parking lot, somebody walking in with a firearm. But I think this is there's a model for this in other places. I called in Cherokee the other day and spoke to my old friends there, and it's working pretty well there. So,
Any comments or questions? And we'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So move.
Support. Roll call, please.
Eggers.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Himmel.
Aye.
All right, moving on then to the resolution establishing Sheldon Fire Department Depreciation Fund.
am I?
You would, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, I have several options. One is to accept the negotiations that Brad Hint and I have done. These negotiations went much better than Brad and I expected and resulted in an overall 124.5% increase in funding in 1 year. Carroll Township increased their funding by approximately 209%, Floyd by 161%, Grant by 170%, and Lynn Township and Sioux County by about 5%, but they were pretty already. The other option is to ask for additional negotiations, which would be understandable. And the third would be in front of you is a resolution draft on the proposed fire depreciation fund. This idea may be premature, but the resolution lays out the math of the funding and summarizes the negotiations. So if I had to do it over again, it might have been better to have done a resolution now on the negotiation result and then do the fire depreciation fund idea later. Apologize if I jumped the gun. You're welcome to continue this to the budget workshops, but I just, sorry.
Sam, just to add to it, it kind of came up during the discussions that we had with the trustees about where the money was getting used, and this was kind of the best way for both sides to see where the money's getting used. So that's kind of where we came up with this.
I think there's great potential and opportunity here, but I would like to maybe pass this on to the budgeting process, just so we have a little larger scope and know what this revenue looks like, the total budget perspective. Fully understand needs of the fire service departments in regard. I want to take a look at it with the total budget as well, see where we're at. So if I can, I'd like to make a motion to move it on to the budget. The further discussion and consideration of this resolution.
You can ask for a second.
Okay. All right, is there support for Tom's motion?
I would support that.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Farahona?
Aye.
Kent?
Aye.
All right, moving on to reports. We have a report today from the Sheldon Community Ambulance Team. Is that going to be you, Kevin? You got help?
I have.
All right.
I have the boss. The one that did the work.
Please state your name.
So my name's Kevin Miller. I'm the director of the Sheldon Ambulance. This is Kristen Hahn, assistant director of the Sheldon Ambulance, as well as our full-time EMT paramedic coordinator. A few of the numbers that are in this report, we are very proud of our team and the support we have received from the community and from you guys throughout this past year. We have been busier, and as you can see our numbers, we have been busier than ever. Talking to somebody for quite a while, this is another significant year. We ended the year with 677 calls, which we had 625 calls in the year of 2018. So as you calls there. You can also see that we did have an increase in transports as well, like transfers from hospital to hospital, but our 911 calls were also increased on that as well. I think another significant response time, our volunteers leave birthday parties, they leave suppers, and they really spend countless hours on the ambulance team, and I think that they deserve your guys. They respond within 4 minutes, and you know, the matter of minutes can mean life and death in our line of work, and so we really appreciate the dedication that they're putting into this and the pride that they take community. I do want to let you guys know that we are continuing to work on membership. That's a never-ending project for us. We have some incentives that we're looking at. We're working really closely with the community, take participation in that to look at different ideas as well. And then we're also looking at some different ideas. I think one thing that I want to thank you guys on behalf of the SCAT team is the approval of a 30 with our events that we do for standby, helping staff, all that, but that's also going to help us ensure that we have a transporting ambulance, and I know that's a major concern that we have as EMS personnel. We continue to do many community service projects out there. You see us around a lot, and we always like to tell people we'd rather meet them not on an ambulance, but rather face-to-face doing something for our community. And that is something we here. We have some big events coming up this year, such as Rise Fest Iowa Ride, preparing for that. So we're going to be pretty busy, and I know today's not going to be the last time you hear from us this year on different reports and things like that. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have, and I just want to thank you guys for your guys' support, as well as the communities.
So how does your current staffing levels, how are they now compared to a year ago?
Sure. So looking at the actual numbers, I believe we had 29 official members, 34 this year. Obviously, looking at the people we have, there are some fluctuation in those numbers because we did lose a few, but we also have retained some. I will tell you that we have 4 EMT students in the class right now that will be getting their EMT certification hopefully around May or June.
Oh.
So, yeah.
One of the things that I saw in the reports here was there was a number of what I would call out-of-town based transfers.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit into a transfer from Primgar to Sioux Falls, for example.
Sure. So there was quite a bit of confusion with that throughout the year, and there has been agreements worked out with SCAT and the hospitals themselves. They were under the impression they could just call dispatch, we would get paged out, and we would respond, which was sometimes the case. Whether or not we were quick enough to get a hold of the hospital, start figuring stuff out. And so when you're looking at the numbers, seeing that we were going out of town for transfers, that was usually lines with the hospitals, letting them know that, we understand that your patients need to get transferred, but we also have priorities here in Sheldon as well. So we have covered that with the surrounding hospitals. Thank you.
I'd just like to share a personal experience that happened to our family recently. You guys did a transfer from the Sheldon Hospital to Sanford and Sioux. Again, I would say that you guys handled yourself very professionally. You were right there, and you nurtured the patient on the trip and whatnot. So our family is very grateful for that service. That my wife was there when you arrived to move her mother, and there were 2 people on your team that my wife knew from way back. And talk about a small town. That's what small. And so we had all the confidence in the world that she was going to get there safe and sound, and of course she did. So I just wanted to share that with you and thank you personally. And pass that on to your team if you would too.
Thank you. We'll definitely pass that.
Kevin, I noticed, was it that some of the staff are listed as drivers?
Correct.
Is it 8? Was it 8 drivers? Or I'm going by memory here. I don't have.
Yeah, we do have 8 drivers. Some of those drivers, if you look at our footnote, they do include firemen and women. Okay. And so some of them, our drivers don't hold.
I guess where I'm going with this, is there opportunity for people who perhaps are not interested in pursuing all of the education to become an EMT, but could serve in that role in terms of adding to your staff?
Absolutely. We encourage anyone who is interested in joining the team, whether as a driver or an EMS provider, to definitely apply, and we'll review those applications on an app basis.
I was not aware of that until just recently,
Yeah.
and so I think we need to get that word out too, that there
Absolutely.
are opportunities even if you are not pursuing an EMT degree.
And what would be the best way to apply if someone's interested?
Absolutely. So we have a Facebook page that we manage. You can send information there. We'll get an application out to you. We also have worked very diligently with the other emergency services to actually form a complete EMA, fire, and EMS application, and that's listed on the city website, and the city office also has them as well. Contact any SCAT member or EMS member to get that information as well. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Mayor, I'd just like to say to Kevin, I really enjoy working with you, and I want to thank you for your passion and your strong sense of idealism, which I hope you never lose, and appreciate the work you do.
Thank you, sir.
I would echo Sam's comments. I think the community has a real respect and love for the Sheldon Community Ambulance team as well. That's evident with your fundraisers that go on and stuff. And having had my mom serve for a number of years, it's probably the best job she ever had. She misses it terribly now. But we do appreciate each and every one of you and your volunteers. Thank you for your work. And if we will do whatever we can to try and make your job easier. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, Sam, it's your turn. All right, then I'm going to go to Todd. Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, two things. Sam and I have been working on the posting for replacing our street superintendent. Prior staff is expected passing 5 weeks ago. So we had hoped to have advertisement out within the next week. With that, I'd like to give my employees a little bit of a pat on the back. With the recent snowstorm, that was the first time, I'll say, without our field general, so to speak. So we asked some guys to do things differently than they've done in the past, maybe run some equipment that haven't run in the past, just take on different roles. Things went really well. So I was very happy for that and thankful.
Thank you.
Kurt, just real quick, just a reminder, tomorrow, our SCDC annual meeting at our annual banquet at the Crossroads Pavilion. So hope you guys good speaker. So kind of recap 2019 and look forward to 2020. So
thank you, Kurt. Officer Dykstra.
I have not.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go to my counsel on the left. Any comments you have?
No, nothing.
And my counsel on the right. The only comment I have, we've got a big snowstorm coming up again this weekend, potentially. I noticed a few days ago, just a reminder that sidewalks are supposed to be cleared off within 24 hours. 12 hours. We give you a little grace on that, but just a reminder, keep those sidewalks clear. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
No. Closed session.
Oh. I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Hint.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all for coming.
Six special elections.
The excitement's going to come.
Yes. We're back on.
All right, we are back in open session. After a motion that someone would like to make.
I'll make the motion to approve our previous discussion in closed session to bargain with the union.
Okay.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Hamel.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
If I might, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
For the benefit of the media and those watching, the city will provide a response in the same manner that was provided yesterday within 14 days.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. Roll call.
Hamel.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Eggers.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Hey, real quick, you guys, in the books that I hand